Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. And now I am joined by the executive director of the Texas Gun Rights Organization. That's Chris McNutt. And the Texas Gun Rights Organization is part of the National Association for Gun Rights. Chris, it's a pleasure, and thank you so much for being on the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, can kind of give our listeners and viewers an understanding of, first and foremost, the National Association of Gun Rights, and then its relationship to the Texas gun rights.
Sure. So I would say the National Association for Gun Rights is the largest gun rights organization in the country. Of course, everybody will say, what about the NRA? Well, I say that we are no compromise, and so we are therefore the large rights organization. We've got over 4.5 million supporters and members across the country. And of that, we've got over 350,000 members and supporters to the state affiliate, which is Texas Gun Rights, which is the Lone Star State's largest gun rights organization.
And I'm proud to be a member of the National Association of Gun Rights and Texas Gun Rights. And I was honored to work with the organization during my time as chairman to make sure that we got constitutional carry passed here in Texas, which was a long time coming. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, thank you to your support for that. And of course, as your time as the party chairman, you were a tremendous asset in the fight for constitutional carry in Texas.
Well, you're too kind. Let's talk and let's get into this and talk about where we are, because we just saw last week the United States House of Representatives passed what we figured they would, very restrictive gun control legislation, joined by some Republicans, scratch your head. And it is now over at the Senate, and the Senate has agreed on a quote unquote framework. 10 Republicans joined in with that. And the lead on that is the Texas Senator John Cornyn. So, what is the position? What is the concerns of Texas Gun Rights and National Association of Gun Rights with this legislation that has been passed in the House and this framework that's been put together in the Senate?
Yeah, so obviously we're 100% opposed to any gun control, no matter what form it is, because there's absolutely no reason that law-abiding citizens should be punished for the actions of a deranged killer. So we opposed everything that was passed by the House, and the same kind of goes for the framework that was outlined. Even though we don't have the language just yet, they have laid out framework for an expansion of NICS for 18 to 20-year-olds. But even worse than that is the framework for red flag gun confiscation laws. And, of course, they're doing everything they can to try to steer away from using the red flag gun confiscation term. But, they're referring to it as incentivizing states to pass intervention orders to ultimately take guns away from people without due process. But we know that is, a dog whistle for red flag gun confiscation, no matter how much they want to say it isn't. And there's absolutely no instance of a red flag law being implemented in any state across the country that has federal due process. It's simply not possible.
Now, you bring up a great point, and you and I have discussed this previously back in November 2018. 61-year-old Gary J. Willis in Ferndale, Maryland, was the victim of red flag laws. The police come to his house at 5:17 in the morning. Now, why are you going to go to anyone's house at 5:17 in the morning for a quote unquote red flag warrant to be served? And you're correct. You don't know where this warrant comes from. You have your firearms taken away from you, confiscated, and then you have to go and try to prove that you're not guilty of something that you've been accused of by someone you don't even know who they are. But the sad thing, what happened to Gary J. Willis there in Ferndale, Maryland, was that he came to his door armed, because anybody 5:17 in the morning, if I'm not expecting you to be banging on my door, something's not right. And he was shot and killed by the police officers. And to this day, we don't know who the officers were. We don't know where this red flag came from. So I'm very concerned about this sense of bribery to the state governments to say, here's grant money that we'll give you if you enact these things, which at its core is unconstitutional.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like dangling a carrot from a stick in front of these legislators that have had their budgets hit hard, frankly, over the last few years. Um, thanks large in part to their overreaction to the COVID pandemic and going way beyond their bounds, their means with abusing power. But yeah, they're hanging that money there in front of the state legislatures, trying to incentivize them to pass red flag laws. And and you kind of touched on it already, but one of the really bad things about red flag laws is that you could be the order could be submitted ex parte, which basically means that the person who's subject to one of these orders doesn't need to be given any type of notice or even know that they're being discussed and that their guns are about to get taken away from them for it. So it's a real dangerous um, policy that should not even be entertained.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's just like going to the Patriot Act, and everyone after 9/11, this Patriot Act sounded great, but when it's in the hands of the wrong people, as we saw, you can then enact surveillance upon people that are your political adversaries and opponents. And when I look at this whole issue about red flags, we've seen red flags. In Parkland, there were countless call outs to the home of Nicholas Cruz. There were countless call outs to this shooter down in Uvalde. There were plenty of indicators and warnings, but yet nothing was done about it. I'm of the mindset, and I'd like to see if you agree, if you are a juvenile and you're displaying violent, mentally disturbed behavior, I think that you should go into a system so that even when you turn 18, it's not like you have a brand new slate. That still carries over because we have some very disturbing things that are happening out there, and we don't need to punish all 18-year-olds to include 18-year-olds that are going out and joining the military. We need to focus on the real issue.
Right. I would definitely say that if somebody is not to be trusted with a gun because somebody believes that they are a threat, they're going to use to commit a crime. I would say the gun is the least of the problems. I mean, that person generally probably should not be in society. And if
Mm-hmm.
people are actually making legitimate threats of violence or of terroristic acts, I mean, there are already systems in place that would allow you to confront those people and potentially put them in jail without the use of red flag laws. So I would say that we need to lean more on the tools that are already available in that regard, because taking one tool away isn't going to solve the problem.
So why do you believe these politicians always go and say we need new laws when they're not even taking care of the laws that are on the books? When we're allowing people to go out there and lie on 4473 background checks, but yet we're being told we need to have increased background checks when the NICS system is severely broken. I did not really see that in this framework that the Senate was talking about. I did not see fixing the NICS system in the legislation that was passed in the United States House.
Yeah, and as Rahm Emanuel once said, who
Mm-hmm.
never let a serious crisis go to waste, and that has been the modus operandi for the left-wing Democrat Party for the last 10 years. Um, so, and then of course on the Republican side, um, they're just afraid of their own shadows. They feel like they have to be doing something to, frankly, appease Democrat voters who are never going to support them. And not only that, we are heading into a red wave year in the midterm elections. So there's really no reason that Republicans should be afraid of doing the right thing, standing on principle, protecting the Second Amendment, and there's just no threat to their seat for them doing that and upholding their oath
You
to their
bring up
office.
you bring up a great political question. Do you think that if Republicans cave compromise on this gun control issue, it will affect their relationship with the base going into the midterms?
Well, so now that is a very good question. I firmly believe that if Republicans cower to the anti-gun left and the media, Bloomberg's, uh, you know, his talking wing, I think that they are going to face retribution from Republican voters, because if voters cannot decipher any difference between a Republican and a Democrat, especially on core principles like the protection of the Second Amendment, they're going to stay home. And that's the last thing that we should be doing right now, when it should be a completely red wave year for Republicans.
And that brings us to the question about what's happening here in the state of Texas, where you know that the governor has set aside a commission to look at, I guess, gun violence, gun control, whatever. And one of the people that the Speaker of the House has put on this committee is Representative Joe Moody, a Democrat out of El Paso, who, of course, was one of the Democrats that picked up and got on private jets and flew away to try to block election integrity. And he is also the person that said Republicans were the ones to blame for the shooting out there in El Paso. You know, why do we continue to see this happen here in the state of Texas? We've already been down this path where the governor brought together a commission and didn't bring you in, didn't bring any representatives that speak up for the Second Amendment advocacy to be part of this commission. So I'd like to get your perspectives and thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really think there is any way of explaining it other than they're either afraid of their own shadows, or frankly, they're just Democrats at heart. They're Republican in name only. And as far as leaving me out of the discussions, I mean, honestly, I prefer to be on the outside applying pressure from their constituents than having a seat at the establishment table when they try to spin me. And as I'm sure you're aware, Governor Abbott didn't want any part of his signing of the constitutional carry bill, which is exactly why they probably kicked me out of the Alamo when I was the only person that wasn't allowed to be there, in spite of being the leading force behind constitutional carry and Texas gun rights. That is, not myself personally. So it's just more of the same from a bunch of corrupt Republicans in name only.
Why do you think it took so long to get constitutional carry passed here in the state of Texas? It has been a legislative priority for the Republican Party of Texas for, if I'm correct, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely correct. And more than anything, I think it has just been, that the establishment gun lobby has been eager to turn a blind eye and, puff up these legislators with A ratings for, doing absolutely nothing to prove that they earned these A ratings. And, so it took us many years to kind of break down those barriers and apply the pressure needed to force a vote on constitutional carry. And just as we always expected, once it finally got to the floor, it passed with flying colors. Not only that, we actually had 7 Democrats cross party lines and vote in favor of the Second Amendment. So that just kind of underlines why it is so important to have grassroots pressure. Every single person that's listening to this show, that's why it is so important to call your lawmakers, email your lawmakers, and tell them to do the right thing and stand up for the Second Amendment, because that is how we win.
You brought up a great point, and it was something that, I served on the NRA board. I resigned last August, and I think a lot of people know why I resigned. This blanket granting of A+ rating, just saying, well, they support the Second Amendment. What is the difference with Texas gun rights and the National Association of Gun Rights? What specifically are you all looking at instead of this, overarching, they're okay with us approach?
So we typically, first of all, we don't like to give out ratings, because we know that, if you give somebody an A+ rating, or, hand out endorsements like candy, at some point those people are going to flip. That's the nature of politics. And, they can use that rating or that endorsement forever. And so we, before we hand out any endorsements, we want to see that not only will these people vote the right way, because, obviously that's the bare minimum, but also, voting the right way doesn't make you a hero. That means that you did your job. So, to get praise, get an endorsement from, Texas gun rights, we really want to see people actually lead the charge for restoring Second Amendment rights and lead the charge for fighting these, instances of gun control like we see that, the governor might be flirting with right now.
What do you think is, the big focus for Texas Gun Rights, National Association for Gun Rights right now in this midterm election cycle? This is a critical election cycle. So the focus objectives for this election cycle, but also what are you looking to do in this fight to make sure we maintain our Second Amendment rights? Because that's kind of like the near close target right now.
Yeah, so right now, I mean, we're pretty much all hands on deck. At our Colorado headquarters for NAGR, as well as here in Texas for TXGR. So we're mobilizing all of our members to contact their lawmakers. We're getting we're doing everything from mail to text messaging to social media ads. I think we're going to play with some digital ads here in the next few days. And right now, really, the main focus is to pressure that that Senate, those 10 Senate Republicans who are that have announced the deal for the framework of the compromise, and just really go all out to make sure that they know that law-abiding gun owners will accept no excuse for any type of gun control. And then, of course, we're going to carry that message on through the midterms. Any politician, any candidate who refuses to be a stalwart for the Second Amendment rights, the rights to keep and bear arms, they will be held accountable for their actions.
One of the criticisms that I have heard other people say, and I somewhat share these criticisms, is that so often on the conservative side, we operate in stovepipes. We operate in silos. We don't coordinate and synchronize our efforts very well. How are we doing, on the Second Amendment side between yourselves, Gun Owners of America, National Shooting Sports Foundation, Second Amendment Foundation? How are we coordinating those efforts so that we are attacking with a unified front?
Right. So I can't really speak for the national organization on that front, but I know here in Texas, we've worked closely with Lone Star Gun Rights, Open Carry Texas, and even a little bit with Gun Owners of America. We have reached out to the NRA and the TSRA in the past, and we've gotten mostly crickets back for them. But my phone is always open to take calls from anybody. I'm willing to work with anybody as long as our interests are aligned in supporting gun rights and making sure that we defeat any forms of gun control.
How can people help and support you here with Texas Gun Rights?
So the best way is to visit txgr.org and sign up to become a member for only $30 a year. And of course, you can get on our email list, so that way, whenever we put out calls to action for people to call their legislators or their lawmakers in DC, that they can do so. And of course, sending in their petitions. Unlike most organizations, every single petition that is signed by someone actually gets delivered to the Capitol office of their politicians. So we're not just trying to list, build, and raise money like everybody else. We actually mean it when we say that we are going to deliver those petitions. So that way, your lawmakers know that that's exactly what you expect.
Well, the largest political convention in the United States of America is going to be taking place this week down in Houston, Texas, the Texas Republican Party convention. Will Texas Gun Rights be down there? Will you have a booth? Can people drop by and see you?
We unfortunately will not have a booth, but we will have a present. Well, we will have a presence. Of course, with it being the largest political convention, as you mentioned, it is also very important that these delegates know that Senator Cornyn, our senior senator, is leading the charge for compromise, and so we got to make sure that the delegates, get activated to tell the senator that we will accept no gun control deals.
Parting words that you'd like to share with our viewers as far as understanding your role and mission with Texas Gun Rights and the concept of individual gun rights overall.
Yeah, I would just say, more than anything at Texas Gun Rights, we count on our members and our supporters to be the firepower behind our organization. We're not Gucci loafer wearing lobbyists with expensive suits that try to rub shoulders and make gun control deals and back rooms. So we really rely on everyday ordinary citizens to apply the pressure to politicians to do the right thing. And so that's why I humbly appreciate the support of anybody who can sign up for Texas gun rights to be a member, because at the end of the day, I'm just a voice. I'm no different than anybody else. I'm just a voice. I'm a messenger, and I will do all in my power to continue fighting for the Second Amendment here in Texas.
Well, I appreciate you, Chris McNutt, the Executive Director of Texas Gun Rights. I am a member and a proud member, and I stand shoulder to shoulder with you at any time. One last time, your website?
It's txgr.org, or you can go to texasgunrights.org.
Well, thank you so very much, Chris, for being on the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. And let's go out there and protect our Second Amendment rights.
All right. Thank you, Colonel.
Thanks so much, Chris.